So Split Fiction just did something really cool that many of you may not have been aware of. Now, that's aside from the fact that it's been getting all kinds of accolades and it's been selling incredibly well. It's got universal acclaim on Metacritic from 97 critic reviews, sitting at 91%. Universal acclaim from user reviews, which some might argue is even tougher, sitting at 90%. On Steam, same thing, overwhelmingly positive reviews of 98%, the score being from 32,928 user reviews. Few games get this kind of universal acclaim from both critics and players and customers alike. And not only that, in terms of the player numbers, you can see the all-time peak here of 259,000 players. And we already have an idea for just how well Split Fiction is selling. It sold a whopping 2 million copies in 1 week. Now, what's really cool about Split Fiction is this thing that it does that I haven't seen attempted in a very long time. The last time I saw something like this attempted, it ended in utter, complete disaster and failure. We'll get to that in a minute. But in this case, it seems like this kind of attempt has succeeded. And what I'm referring to is a video game that features an actual prize for someone who does something. In the case of Split Fiction, there was this hidden video message from Josef where if you were the first to complete this really tough level that people called Laser Hell because it was that tough, the first to complete that would be greeted with a video where Josef would come out and say, hey, congrats on completing this challenge. That was really tough. Congratulations on being the first ones to do it. Come to Sweden and see what we're working on next. And so Josef came out on Twitter to congratulate these two content creators for finishing the secret challenge, Laser Hell in Split Fiction. Very impressive. I'll keep my promise and invite you both to Sweden for an early look of our next game. We'll be in touch. And you can actually find a YouTube video of what this looks like. So this right here is Laser Hell. You can see right here that yeah, it's pretty crazy, and it only gets crazier and crazier as the level goes on, as you can see right here. And to get into this level, you do have to figure out a little puzzle. You stumble upon this right here, and this is in binary, and you have to input that on the floor. And once you do so, you gain access to this, but a lot of people are bound to potentially miss this. It's just subtle enough. And once you do beat it, you're greeted with the following video message that I'll show right now.
Wow, amazing. You have to understand this challenge, there are barely people in our team that can make it. It took us a lot of time to finish it. And I'm telling you, this is a crazy, crazy achievement you have done. And I'm not talking to you guys who are looking on this on YouTube. If you're seeing this on YouTube, you should go to the game. It's a really hard challenge. But to those of you that are actually in the game, seeing this video, I'm super amazed. And I'm gonna tell you one thing. If you see me in real life somewhere and you can prove to me that you actually did this challenge, I can promise you the first one who does that, I'm gonna fly you to Sweden and show you early footage of our next game. I promise you that. And then show you some other surprises as well. I guarantee you that. Just grab me wherever, whenever, and just prove it to me. And I promise you, I will take you to Sweden and you will have the adventure of your life. Again, extremely good work. Thank you, guys.
So yeah, that's pretty awesome. Not a lot of games do stuff like this. And in the case of Josef this is a promise that he's clearly more than willing to fulfill, given that he's already tweeted not only the usernames of the people who achieved this and kind of showed and proof of them having done this, being the first players to beat this level, but full on stating publicly that they will keep their promise and execute on this award, this real-life award that they integrated into the game with a developer message from the game director himself. Now, I bring this up because it reminds me a lot of another instance where this did not go as well. These are like two scenarios that attempted the same thing but are completely contrasting in the way they were executed. They're almost like two different languages. Speaking of different languages, that brings us to the sponsor of today's video, Molyneux, a fun-to-use, fully featured language learning app. Right out of the gate, I was impressed by the selection of languages here, featuring 41 different foreign languages that can be learned from 33 native languages. Beyond that, I found that the learning process has been really well put together. For every language, the app presents a roadmap that gives you a glimpse of the entire curriculum. The lessons themselves do a really great job of slowly ingratiating you into new words, terminologies, phrases, sentences, and topics with increasing complexity while teaching them in a gradual, well-paced, and intuitive fashion. Spoken lessons in particular are a highlight, featuring a chatbot assistant that walks you through the proper pronunciation and context in which words you're learning are used in conversation through real-time feedback. Arrivederci.
Arrivederci. Correct.
And it should be noted that audio materials were all recorded with fluent speakers, so you'll be hearing authentic pronunciations for every language. It's all further aided by a user interface that's pleasant to the eyes, achievements and social features to encourage you to stay the course, progress trackers to help you evaluate your standing, the ability to easily review words, terms, and vocabulary you've unlocked throughout your lessons, as well as weekly and monthly quizzes that help you review all you've learned. There's a reason why Mondly has been downloaded over 125 million times and is in the top 5 language learning apps worldwide. And if you use my link, mondly.app/yongya, you'll be granted a 96% discount for lifetime access to all languages. Pretty good offer if you ask me. All right, so what am I talking about when referring to the other instance of a developer, game director, inserting himself into a game and relaying this promise of like a real award for being the first person to accomplish this really incredible thing in the game or accomplishing this challenge? Well, I'm referring to none other than Peter Molyneux and his game Godus. Peter Molyneux is synonymous with essentially broken promises. He's a man with great ambition and has some really cool ideas, but seldom does he fully execute on them and often overpromises. And his worst case of that was, without question, Godus, or specifically the game before that called Curiosity. This was essentially an app where you would tap away at like little cubes, and it was just this giant cube where at the center there was a quote-unquote life-changing award for the person who would tap the last cube and win this award. It was this almost like Russian doll kind of scenario, but with cubes, and it was like, I don't know, billions or trillions of cubes that people had to tap away at communally until one person would tap away at the last cube, and they were greeted with the following message.
We could say, here's a wad of cash, but it needs to be more meaningful than that. It needs to say more about the effort, as much about the effort as about the outcome. And so, what is in the center is something that only we can grant. And it is the ability to be a digital god. We are making a game called Godus. The whole game is about being a god to your followers. You, the person who would reach the center, will be the god of all people that are playing Godus. You will intrinsically decide on the rules that the game is played by. And, here's the life-changing bit, you will share in the success of the product. Every time people spend money on Godus, you will get a small piece of that pie. We will follow up with details of what that means. It does mean, let's break this down and analyze this. It means that you will decide on how people play a game. You will accrue riches from that game, from the start until the finish of your reign. That, by any definition of the word, is life-changing. You will have fame, you will have fortune, and you will have the power to introduce morals into a game.
Now, for all of those life-changing promises to be fulfilled, the game Godus itself had to be successfully executed, successfully launched, and it would have had to perform successfully financially for the individual who won this award to get those life-changing awards. And that's where things went completely awry. Godus launched to tepid reception. It did not have any of the promised features, and the individual who won the Curiosity Award was ultimately kind of eventually ignored and essentially full-on ghosted, where when the winner would inquire about when he would be able to execute on being this digital god and get a portion of the earnings of Godus, they would just not respond to him because the development team knew that they could just not fulfill on that promise. It all began with this Kickstarter that fully funded itself. The goal was £450,000. It ended up making over £500,000. So by all metrics, this was a successful Kickstarter, but slowly the promises started to fall apart, especially when it came to like when the game would actually launch and when it would, have all the features that it promised. Eventually, we would see the game launch in early access on PC on September of 2013. And then the game would launch on mobile platforms like iOS and Android. And for those who don't know what Godus is, this is kind of what it looks like. It is a game akin to Populous, where you essentially establish a civilization. And, it had like a cool little art style and whatnot. And the idea was that the winner of Curiosity would reign over everyone who was playing this title, especially kind of the multiplayer aspect of things. But that was another promise that started to fall apart. The multiplayer feature that allowed the Curiosity player to rule over the folks who play this game, that multiplayer feature never came to fruition. That feature was something that eventually the developers admitted they would probably not be able to deliver on. The game launched to tepid reception. From 12 critic reviews on iOS, 60% review score, and then in terms of user score, the players enjoyed it even less, especially because of those unfulfilled promises. And something we saw later on was this article from February 2015 from Rock, Paper, Shotgun. This article covered a post from one of the developers here, designer Konrad Najinski, who has recently been added to the team and is being impressively frank about his experiences on the Godus message boards. He said that he doesn't believe the Kickstarter promises are achievable, and, quote, a lot of the multiplayer stuff is looking seriously shaky right now, especially the persistent stuff like Hub World. And he kind of expresses frustrations at the way development was going. And keep in mind that this is another unfulfilled promises on top of a pile of broken promises when it comes to Peter Molyneux's track record. And so at one point, Peter Molyneux was interviewed by Rock, Paper, Shotgun, and this news outlet very frankly asked Peter Molyneux, do you think that you're a pathological liar? Which took Peter Molyneux aback. But they kind of very openly and honestly said, I know it's a harsh question, but it seems an important question to ask because there do seem to be lots and lots of lies piling up. And what Peter Molyneux said, he said he's not aware of any lie, actually. I'm aware of me saying things, and because of circumstances often outside of our control, those things don't come to pass, but I don't think that's called lying, is it? I don't think I've ever knowingly lied at all. And if you want to call me on one lie, I'll talk about it for sure. Just because you had every intention on fulfilling on a promise when you made the promise doesn't mean that when you break that promise, it's not a lie, especially when this happens repeatedly. Like one offense, shit happens. But when this becomes a pattern, then yeah, you kind of have a problem. You kind of just lack any semblance of restraint when it comes to ambition and conveying those ambitions and then being able to execute on those ambitions in a way that is reasonable, in a way that is plausible. So that's all on you. At best, you are woefully irresponsible with your words. And at worst, yeah, you kind of might be a pathological liar when the pattern is so continuous. One of the things that Rock, Paper, Shotgun brought up here was that during the Kickstarter for Godus, it was stated that they wouldn't use a publisher. It'll just be you and our unbridled dedication, no publishers, is the exact quote. And then 5 months later, they signed with a publisher. That's just straight up, yeah, a lie. That's you saying you will do one thing and then doing something completely different that compromises people's trust in you because you just never seem to make good on your word. Even if your intention wasn't to lie, it doesn't change the fact that in the long run, the end result for the customers and the community that trusted you, they feel lied too. And all at the same time came coverage of the fact that the individual who won the Curiosity game and was promised a life-changing prize, has received absolutely nothing. Not only were the promises surrounding Curiosity and what the winner would get not fulfilled, they were just kind of thrown aside and not given any sort of compensation or reparations for those broken promises. For those who don't know, the winner of this game was a man by the name of Brian Henderson. And as GameSpot details here, his role in Godus cannot commence until the game's multiplayer is introduced, except it was announced at around this time that it didn't seem likely that the multiplayer features could be implemented because of essentially a disastrous development cycle, because once again, Peter Molyneux didn't know how to execute on the ambitious promises that he made. This article also details how much of the game's internal team has either left the studio or moved on to a different project, with the remaining lead designer of Godus publicly expressing that features such as multiplayer are unlikely to arrive soon. And then beyond that, Molyneux himself, Peter Molyneux, could not guarantee that the multiplayer would ever come to the game, and so this prize of him being a digital god would not come to fruition. And on top of that, because this game would clearly not see any sort of financial success, the thing that was promoted as life-changing, the money that he would get, the piece of the pie that he'd get from the game's profits and revenue, all of that was also just not something the game could fulfill on. So Henderson, tapped away at this thing and was kind of hyped up and then was completely let down. New Salad Eurogamer did a whole expose on this that you can read about right here. I'll have a link to this in the description section below. Scrolling down, you'll actually find a statement from Peter Molyneux, though. He did provide a statement to Eurogamer when he was inquired about this whole kind of messed up situation. And Molyneux, this is all he had to say. That's pretty poor, isn't it? When it comes to Brian not receiving any awards whatsoever, this is his apology, essentially. He said, that's pretty poor, isn't it? He should have a contact here. That's pretty shoddy for us to not keep him posted. I totally and absolutely and categorically apologize. That isn't good enough, and I'll take on my own shoulders that I should have made sure he was communicated with. We will, from today onwards, do that. It's just on a list. The trouble is, it's very easy to forget about things that are further down the list when you're so busy with things at the top of the list. I think it's unfair on him. We should keep him posted. I'll speak to him myself. I don't know how you forget about this aspect of your project when it's the entire premise of your project. The entire premise of Curiosity was to have this winner become the digital god of a game called Godus that he would rule over. That's the whole shebang. That's the thing you kind of put at the center of your marketing. And the fact that Peter Molyneux's like, oh shit, yeah, I forgot about that part, is frankly ridiculous. And so the end result is a situation where, this became one of the most disastrous ventures on that front. And eventually, Godus as a game was completely pulled from Steam in December of 2023. Never having left early access, ending unceremoniously, the winner of Curiosity has still gone unrewarded, and it marks one of the most kind of disastrous game releases, game ventures in the history of gaming, especially coming from Peter Molyneux, who was such a well-known name, both for some of the good games that he did release early on in his career, and then for all the promises that would fall off the wayside later in his career. And so this right here lives on in infamy. And I bring this up because this is kind of somewhat similar to what Josef is kind of pulling here with Split Fiction, with putting himself in video form inside the game after certain players became the first to complete a specific challenge. Except what Josef did was, not only did he not make the premise of the entire game around this one thing, he made this just almost like a bonus, this little Easter egg, this little thing that players could stumble upon. He also didn't overpromise, right? He's not telling the players who complete the challenge that this will be a life-changing prize or whatever. He's not kind of presenting this thing as the biggest deal in the world. It's just like a nice little neat, cool prize. So he didn't overpromise, and then beyond that, he actually is able to execute on that promise and is already executing on that promise by reaching out to the folks to come over to Sweden, check out his next game. And so Josef kind of pulled what Peter Molyneux tried to pull with Godus and with Curiosity, except he scaled things down enough that he could actually fulfill on that particular attempt at kind of having a direct communication with players through his game. And that was ultimately the key to success with this particular venture is first, he built a kick-ass game, right? That's important. Before promising awards and prizes and whatnot, you have to be able to deliver on a game that will make those kinds of prizes for this particular game feel substantial. And then within that, he decided to kind of do something really cool and neat and something that you could only do with video games. And I mean, that's really the thing that sets Josef Fares and Peter Molyneux apart, right? Peter Molyneux, incredible ambitions, but has no idea what he's doing and doesn't put to action what he says. Josef Fares, he has a boisterous personality and he says a lot of things, but he also delivers on the things he says. When he, talks about no bullshit, no microtransactions and all these things, you can tell he really means it because he's never partaken in those schemes. He does consumer-friendly things like allowing his co-op game to be something that, two players don't need to buy the game. If one player buys the game, somebody else can participate without having to buy a copy, things like that. And then beyond that, when he says that, he fucks shit up without fucking shit up, whatever that saying of like, we make kick-ass games, he actually does make those kick-ass games. He won Game of the Year with It Takes Two. Split Fiction, it is without question going to be a strong Game of the Year contender. And then on top of delivering on what is most important about you releasing a video game, not gimmicks, but like first having an awesome game that then the gimmicks can be inserted into, on top of executing on that and actually making some of the best games we are seeing in gaming right now, he decides to do this neat little thing, but make it at just the right scale for it to be a cool thing that players, especially the winners, can experience without overpromising, overhyping, and trying to change somebody's life and whatever. And this is something that Josef Fares didn't have to do, but he decided to do anyway because it's fun, because it's a way to thank players, especially the more dedicated ones. And it also just makes for great PR. People are talking about this whole thing, and it's kind of unique in the sense that not a lot of games have like real world prizes such as this, where the game director himself is like, hey, I want to give you something. And so kudos to Josef Fares for just executing on every single freaking metric with Split Fiction, the duality of man. You've got on one hand your Peter Molyneux who overpromise and underdeliver, and then you've got your Josef Fareses who, not only are they confident in what they promise, but they promise just the right amount. They promise what they are able to deliver on, and then they actually do deliver in epic fashion. And so that kind of contrast is fascinating to see on display here. But that's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on this real-world prize that Josef Fares hid inside Split Fiction, and what you think about Split Fiction in general and its success. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.